Hello, hello, everybody. This is not the chair of the film board speaking. It's Marguerite. Hello, everybody. Just calling your attention to order. I will hand it over to the chair very shortly, but wanted to let you know something of urgent importance before we commence, which is that it's Jessica's birthday. Oh, well. Yes. Now, I meant to bring a cake, but completely forgot, so I've got a lot of little cakes. And I've got a knife and I've got napkins. It's kind of like, 1st of July, happy Canada, I don't know, picnicky vibe. So I'm gonna cut these up and she will get on with the meeting and all the adulting. But I just wanted to say happy birthday to Jessica.
Thank you so much. And
happy birthday.
29 is looking good on me, I know. Thank you.
Blow out your candle, Jessica.
Actually, you know what? Because these are individually wrapped and I don't want to touch all of them, I'm going to just pass them around with the knives and the napkins, and you guys can cut yourselves.
So we can all get messy hands.
Starting with the birthday girl.
There you go. I'm going to pass because I have a cupcake here as well. So.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Thank you, everybody.
Hi, Matt. I see that you're online. I just want to check that you have audio as well.
I do. It actually just cut out a second ago, but I imagine it's going to kick back in.
We heard you. Thanks.
It's the party. We're kicked out of the party. Yeah, we can't hear the floor.
Your cake is in the mail.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. That was a nice way to start the meeting. Officially, all the best to you, Jessica, on your big day. We have quorum here. I believe that the YouTube is sparked up.
As the kids say. As the kids say.
Yes? Yep. Oh, great. Thank you. I'm Councillor Paula Fletcher. I'm chair of this fantastic Film, Television, Digital Media Advisory Board. I'm here with my co-chair, Jason Mossick. And the clerk has confirmed we have quorum, so I'd like to call meeting number 4 of the FTDMAB to order and welcome everybody here. It's here in person and here online. We can see you all online. Thank you for joining, everyone. We have a great big meeting. It's great. And so there can be members of the public attending. I think there may be some here, so welcome. And please, everybody who's online, if there's any problems with YouTube, then just please be patient. There's been a number of problems. I'm hoping not for this particular board, that we will not have technical problems today. So, staff, if you could please keep your microphones muted unless you need to answer a question. Speak, and members, you know that if you want to speak, raise your hand, unmute your mic, do whatever you need to do to get the attention, my attention, or attention of my co-chair. If you need to have any agendas, can you please, motions, please send them in to ftdmb@toronto.ca. I don't know if you'll have any, or bring it up here and we'll have a look at it. We're not going to be too overly formal. And although we're meeting in different locations, as well as remotely today, our board acknowledges that the land we're meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Could I have a motion, please, to confirm the minutes of the board meeting held on May 16th, 2024. Somebody who was here, if you could please move those minutes. Thank you very much. It's Cynthia. Second. Thank you, Shelley. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That's carried. There's 6 items on the agenda, and I see Mr. Tobin is here. Pat, are you ready, or do you want to have something go ahead of you? Yes, I think we can accommodate you. Mr. Tobin's here, Head of Economic Development, and he's here to talk about the Culture and Economic Plan update that we talked about previously. But what I think we'll do is just go through the agenda. That's number 1, Culture Plan, Economic Plan update as it relates to the film. Number 2, McCleary Planning Update, Creatio and City Planning. Number 3, Infrastructure and Sustainability Working Group update. Number 4, Marketing and Communications Working Group update. Number 5, Staff updates. And number 6, Los Angeles Mission. And I understand, Margaret, you'd like to move staff updates up or till after McCleary or after Pat?
After the second presentation. So yes, after the now with the new order, after the culture plan and economic action plan.
So-
Then we would have staff updates.
Okay, so if you don't mind moving that to item number 3 from item number 6, I think, is it? 5? Motion, is that all right with everybody if we reorder the agenda like that? Nobody's opposed, that's great, thank you. So what we'll start with is and I know that a number of people have been engaged in the McCleary planning update because it's right across the street from about 40 acres of film lands. So we have Mr. Scott Pennington here from Create TO today. And is anybody here from city planning, Scott, with you, or you're here on behalf of the... Okay, thank you. Do you have your microphone on? Because we can't hear you.
Now I do, Councillor. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, but you do have to, these mics are funny, you have to be quite close. Thank you very much. Thanks so much. Please start.
Okay. Well, I'll just go right into it. Thank you very much to the board for letting us come back to update you on the McCleary District Precinct Plan. Thank you very much to the Chair, Councillor Paula Fletcher, for your ongoing leadership on this file. I do want to acknowledge that we at Create have been working very closely with city staff. I'm joined by my colleague Eric Sayre from the Waterfront Secretariat. Behind me is Paul Arklander, a colleague at Create. These are really the brains of the operation. I'm just the mouthpiece today.
I'd really like you to speak up a tiny bit more, please.
Will do.
Thank you. Thank
And then, of course, we've been working very closely with Jessica and Marguerite on the interface with the film industry. So I really appreciate the time and commitment that they've applied to this project. At the last presentation we provided, I gave an overview of the geography and the overall work plan. I'm not going to spend too much time on the preamble, but the timing of this project is really critical. So I did want to start at least with an update on the project timeline. So as mentioned last time, we are working with the direction from the councillor with a very aggressive delivery schedule. And there's a real need for us to deliver this in a timely way given the amount of private interest that there is within the district. I think last time we had mentioned that there are 5 private landowners. We've now seen 3 applications come forward from those landowners. So we know we're working we are playing a little bit of catch up, although there is a strong policy foundation here. And so the expectation is that we will have this work done substantially by the end of the year to give city staff and the councillor the foundation that they need in order to respond to those applications, but also more importantly, articulate what the future vision will be for the build out of McCleary District. So we've really spent the last number of months on what I would consider to be visioning and due diligence. We've been looking at various different options. We're now moving towards that stage where we will have a preferred or series of preferred concepts that we're looking at from a massing density road layout perspective. We are going to be coming forward to the Waterfront Toronto Design Review Panel later this month with those details. I'm not going to get into the specifics of that yet because the team is still working on them, but I will articulate for you what the vision is today, and then at future meetings of the Infrastructure Sustainability Committee, but also this board, we will give you more of a detailed summary of how the plan is evolving. I'll leave it there in terms of the timelines. The one additional item I'll add is that we are really looking to start. We've had a number of public engagement or targeted engagement sessions to date with various stakeholder groups, including with the film board and the subcommittee, as well as local landowners. We're looking at more of a public-facing engagement exercise starting this fall. So in terms of what we've heard, and as I said, the last time we presented to the board was in March. We had clear direction from the chair that we should be coming back and speaking to the subcommittee at that time to hear more specifically and get into the details of the plan with the committee members. And so I wanted to articulate what we've heard from that group here. So the first thing, and we knew this going in, that one of the concerns would be how's the build out of this district, which is going to be a key component of it will be mixed use. How is that going to interact with adjacent film and other employment uses? We know that interface is very important to the board, and it's one that's obviously articulated in the planning framework. So one of the key points there was the committee felt that the consideration towards height, at least in terms of the transition and ratios with adjacent areas, should be kept consistent, whereby there would be density to the north adjacent to Lakeshore, but stepping down as you get closer towards the studio uses to the south. So that's something that we've heard loud and clear, and I fully expect will be reflected in the final plan. We also heard the importance of considering public art as a means to acknowledge and celebrate the importance of this area as the heart of the film industry, or one of the key clusters for the film industry in the GTA. And so that's something that we're going to think about certainly as a part of this stage, and then as we start developing the public arts plan through later phases, we'll certainly be able to talk about in more detail, but I think that's certainly an important principle to carry forward. Affordable housing, we know, is a key driver for this plan in the first place, given the extent of public land. There's an ambitious target of at least 20%, but as the councillor identified at the last meeting, the expectation is we will be more aggressive than that, particularly on public lands. We also want to think about in that, as we advance affordable housing, what the opportunities for sector-specific housing would be. And so that's something that was expressed again at the subcommittee, and it's something that we're going to work with you to really think through how to develop a program that makes sense for industry. We know it's a challenge, particularly for workforce housing, given the affordability challenges we face across the city to have people live where they work. Support for agents of change principles. Now, this is maybe a term that some in the room may not be familiar with, but essentially this means that if you are responsible for bringing in a sensitive use, that the onus is on you to manage the impact with the existing industry or users. So this is something that there is experience with in the city, particularly adjacent to, say, music venues or transportation corridors. This is a principle that we would look at bringing forward as a part of this development, i.e. setting reasonable expectations, both through design but also through use of space, so that we're not setting future users up for conflict. And so that can be expressed through real estate agreements or other forms of regulatory approval. So that's a principle that we've heard, and I fully expect, again, that we'll be able to carry forward through the plan. Film-friendly features. Certainly this is something that I think people can have confidence are expressed in the PIC use urban design guidelines, but again, something we'd want to look at here, whether it's in terms of film-friendly street, the types of spaces that are being designed, and then what can we do with these spaces as they start to build out. We know this is a development that's going to occur over decades. There will be opportunities in the interim. Can we use those for areas that may not always get a lot of attention but are in desperate need within the industry, backlot, storage, parking. And so that's something, as for Creatio as landowner, we'll certainly be open to discussing with the industry as we go forward. I don't want to linger too much on this slide, but I will say that we are very sensitive to the context in which this development will be occurring. I really look at McCleary as the nexus within the future evolution of the Portlands, and I think Anybody who spends time down there recognizes the amount of change that we anticipate or will be seeing. I think we can say that with certainty over the coming decades. Villiers Island was recently before council, so we have a view of how that community is going to start to advance. Obviously, East Harbor is a growth node for the future, but these developments are going to occur against the backdrop of existing vital employment and film-related uses in the Portlands. McCleary District is, I would characterize it as a vital zone of transition between what we see as future mixed use or higher density commercial and those existing film-related uses. And so managing that transition is going to be very critical to the success of both this district, but also of the Portlands in this area of the city writ large. Again, we do not want to create a scenario where we're creating conflict down the road. What we really want to do is complement and enhance what's already there and ensure it works with what's to come. So through the process early on, we sought out to develop some guiding principles for how this exercise would occur. And as I've mentioned previously, we are working with a very solid policy foundation through the Portlands Planning Framework adopted in 2017. So what we've really done is take what was in that plan already for the Portlands writ large and really apply it to this district in particular. And I think, if I wanted to emphasize a few key points here, obviously in the case of affordable housing, since 2017, that's just become that much more of an important priority for the city and for the use of city lands. And so that's something that we are very focused on. I think maybe, as we think about these principles going forward, we could include that sector-specific consideration, but certainly we know that the need for affordable housing is paramount. The second point around not just accommodating or ensuring we're a good neighbor for PIC's use, but enhancing this important economic cluster. I think that's a key point that we're trying to incorporate into the plan, and that's again where we're really looking to this committee for some support. And then we're also, in terms of design excellence, ensuring a strong and welcoming public realm, sustainable design. I do want to emphasize, though, point number 5, which is enhancing the Indigenous presence in the Portlands. When the Portlands Planning Framework was adopted, it was in 2017, it was in advance of the city's Reconciliation Action Plan. I know this is a very important consideration for the councillor. We've been thinking about how can we ensure that all of our development work in the Portlands is responsive to the commitments that the city has made to Indigenous peoples to ensure that that important heritage is reflected within these developments in a number of different ways. And that's something that we're thinking through ourselves with the city, with the Indigenous Affairs Office and other stakeholders to ensure that that's carried forward. So that's a critical, I would consider to be a new principle that we're building into this plan. So, as mentioned, we're going to get into some of the more specific design elements through design review panel and then successive meetings with this group, but I do want to give a sense of where we think this is headed. So I have some precedent imagery that our consultant team has been working with in terms of thinking through the design, just to give a sense of what the themes and focus will be. And our hope is that the design that you eventually see come forward really reflects this vision. So the first key part is that the anchoring component of the district will be a new central district park. It's about a 2 to 2.5 acre new park that will be built out. Working with parks, we've been developing a vision for that plan that incorporates both sustainable and green infrastructure that enhances, for example, things like stormwater conveyance, but also making sure that this responds to the need for active recreational uses, which are in real short supply within this part of the city. So that's what we're working through with parks right now, and so that you can see some examples of how we hope that looks. Not a passive, green space, but something that can actually be used in a number of different ways. Public realm, there was a lot of discussion about this in the context of the Villiers plan. That's something that we're giving very close attention to. I think what needs to be acknowledged, both here and in Villiers Island is that as we think forward towards a 21st century community that we're building essentially from scratch here, the public realm and the rights of way do a lot of heavy lifting from a green infrastructure standpoint, from a servicing standpoint, as Eric can certainly attest. And as well, when we look at something like McCleary, how can we ensure that these are film, event, pedestrian-friendly spaces? So there's a number of different ways in which we're trying to accommodate for that. And certainly the design guidelines that we have through the PIC work is very helpful in terms of thinking that through. And some images in terms of the blue-green network, bioswales, open channel conveyance of water. Some of the designs that we start to see emerging for this area, I think, are really going to put this district, similar to Villiers Island, at the forefront of sustainable design. And then, of course, one of the key urban design challenges that we're trying to address through the plan is how do you meaningfully incorporate new PIC production interactive creative uses within this area. So it's a 25% target right now with 75% residential. We know that this is going to be integrated from a precinct level, from a block level. We're really trying to think through how you do it from a building level. Unfortunately, there aren't a lot of really great local precedents, so we're having to go further afield to places like Vancouver, parts of the U.S. There's an example from Boston, and even further, there's an example from Seoul, Korea, there as well. So there are precedents that we can draw upon, but that's going to be the big challenge for us, is how do you incorporate, whether it's film or other types of creative industrial uses, into buildings with other more sensitive uses. And that's something that we're really trying to think through with our architects. And hopefully we'll have some good examples that we can put forward that allow this plan to advance in a truly integrated way in the future. And then, of course, where we have towers, we want to make sure that we are a leading design. So there's some examples that we think are positive from an environmental sustainability standpoint. Signature design, I don't know, we'll see that kind of curvilinear, but we want signature style where we've identified signature or high-profile sites within the district. Those will be identified in the plan where the expectation for architectural excellence will be even higher. And then always ensuring that the public realm or street level is truly activated and special and ideally used for community serving or community-facing uses. Okay, I'm almost done here. So an area of obvious concern, again, is in terms of what we think the density will be in this area. Similar to Villiers Island, we are looking at where there's opportunities to optimize housing within McCleary District, but with a truly heightened level of sensitivity to the impact on adjacent uses. So we are working closely with city planning, thinking about a range of different height and density scenarios, starting at the low end with what was in the PLFP, but at the high end with what would be consistent with adjacent permitted densities. So we're working through how can we optimize both the amount of housing that we can achieve on site or the amount of density we can achieve on site, while again avoiding having a negative impact on those adjacent uses. So that's something that we're in the process of looking through right now, and certainly we'll invite your feedback on as we move towards finalizing a plan. Okay, and then last slide, just in terms of next steps. So as I mentioned, later this month, we're going to be coming forward with more design detail to design review panel, and that's a public session. So welcome your participation and feedback through that. But we'll certainly look for an opportunity to come back and share the same material with either the committee or with the subcommittee in short order. As noted, we are moving towards a more front-facing public engagement exercise in the next few months. And then we'd be looking at bringing in a more formal update to this board, both through the subcommittee in the interim period, but ultimately to the next meeting, which I believe is in November. So I'll leave it there, and any questions, welcome to answer them. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Scott. I know this was at the infrastructure, whatever we want to call it, subcommittee working group. I call it the subcommittee, but I know it's not legally that. Nonetheless, Magali, do you have anything, I believe you were leading that. Do you want to say anything or ask any questions or indicate the conversation there?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, not at the moment. It'll be part of my updates. So no questions unless someone else does.
All right.
From our legal committee. Yes.
All right. Is that you, Jason? No? Anyone else have any questions about that? Shelley?
Thank you.
Councillor Carroll.
Yeah, just a quick question, because you popped in there the workplace housing, the wonderful concept that that's something that we've needed for a long time. We have experience in it in the city, but we also know that it takes a long time. So while this is a long way from being done, actually figuring out how you would do it is something that can then hold up the project later on down the line. So I wonder if you're talking to the housing secretariat or, whomever needs to be in the conversation, so that that could be fleshed out as a concept and keep pace with the planning exercise.
Yep, Councillor, thank you for that question. It's a very important consideration for us, particularly given we're not just thinking about this from a regulatory or planning framework perspective, but an implementation perspective as well. So yes, we do have multiple, at some point we could show you the number of individual work streams that we're coordinating as input to this. We do have a work stream that's specifically focused on affordable housing, in which the Housing Secretariat is an active participant. So we can start to have that conversation certainly with them in terms of the mechanics of it. The idea in terms of how do you actually move this forward from an approval standpoint, the planning framework is probably going to point to this as a priority, but how we actually solution it, that will come forward as a part of what we call a business and implementation plan that would have council approval in short order. So that would be something we'd be looking at doing once the planning framework has been adopted, coming back to council soon with that direction, so we can start focusing closely.
Okay, so they are going to be parallel. One's not going to hold up the other.
No.
Okay, thank you. That's my only question. Thanks, Madam Chair.
And we will be having a more fulsome discussion, I think, when you're bringing your report forward. Magali, correct? Yes? I wonder if you could stay for that. Maybe you were at that meeting, but then I think you'll hear more from everyone. Perhaps you could just tell me, is the site servicing accomplished here, or it's still to be done?
Eric, do you want to handle that one?
Yeah, so at the precinct plan level, we haven't done specific
I
site.
can't hear you, Eric.
Sorry. So we haven't done the site servicing for specific sites at the precinct plan level. So that will come forward. We've done sort of an analysis on the precinct more broadly. So the trunk systems that will support the site servicing, but the servicing would still need to be done at a site level, depending on the specific proposal.
Is it in place or not?
The existing, so the capacity to serve what we're currently contemplating is not in place. So infrastructure improvements will have to be made to support the development.
Okay, so that'll be part of this precinct plan, identifying all the requirements for site servicing.
Yeah, so that was part of the
everything that needs to be
27.
upgraded alongside the Villiers Island piece.
Correct.
And I note in the guiding principles, it does say affordable housing, but I think our board has been very clear about sector housing for film, and I don't see that there, so I would ask that that be reflected in any documents, or we'll make that more formal later when we have that conversation.
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you mind staying on, Scott?
No, absolutely
Okay,
not.
thank you. We'll add you back in here when we do that, if that's all right. Maybe there'll be more questions at that point when we get Magali's report.
Okay.
So stay tuned and stay here. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
This is a very meaty agenda. I will note there's 2 applications in already that I'll talk about that later, but I just got news of them today. I'm going to receive that item when we have I'll do them both at the same time, when we have the infrastructure update, if that's okay. But thank you for reminding me. Now we have our economic development team here for the long-awaited Culture Plan and Economic Plan update. Thank you very much, Mr. Tobin. I'll let you introduce all your folks. This has been a topic of discussion here, trying to find out which ocean we swim in, the Atlantic or Pacific, the culture or the industry. So it should be helpful. I think you'll probably have some questions so we can define the role of film clearer in any plans the city has. So thank you very much.
Great. Thanks a lot, Councillor Fletcher, to you as chair for the invitation to return. I'll introduce Adironke, and then we'll get into the presentation. Just while the team sets up, as you said, a media agenda. We had planned for about a 10-minute presentation, but wanted to check in with you on time constraints.
I think we're okay. We all right for that? We like meat here. We're good. I want to hear this.
Okay, great. So as
I don't
Councillor
like
Fletcher...
cake so much. Marguerite got a whole bunch back, but... All right, thank you.
So thank you very much. As Councillor Fletcher mentioned, my name is Pat Tobin. I'm the General Manager, Economic Development and Culture for the City of Toronto. I'm here today with my colleague Adironke Akande, who's the Director of Arts and Culture Services. This is our return to the Film Board following a couple of other stops in the development of both a culture plan and an economic development plan for the City of Toronto, as well as work with a subcommittee that some of you have participated on. So as mentioned, we'll take about 10 minutes to work through about 20 slides. I'm just making sure we are good to go. Great. So if we go to the first slide, we'll just give you an overview of what we're going to talk about today. We won't get into the background, I think, at any great depth. I think folks are quite familiar. We'll dive right into the two planning processes, which are both traveling in parallel towards the October session of City Council. And we'll treat each of them, again, in parallel, looking at the framework as well as the content that's currently in development through the community consultation process. Next slide, please. I'd like to note, as has been raised here at the committee previously, action plans such as we are preparing now have been something of a tradition for a mature municipality, but certainly in Toronto, in terms of being developed with broad public consultation and brought up through council. So for the culture plan, the last one was concluded, in fact, in 2011. And the economic plan was last brought to council in January of 2013. So controlling for the pandemic, we're fairly overdue to bring these documents updated back through council, and certainly a lot has changed. They are high-level documents that sort of provide an assessment of where the sectors are at, what the significant trends the city needs to pay attention to are, and thereafter sets out a series of strategies and policies to try to enhance economic growth and cultural development. Thereafter, there are sector-specific strategies, such as the film strategy due for a forthcoming update, driven by this table, the Film Board. And these strategies are not, let me say, encumbered by the broader culture plan or economic development plan, but really are the strategies by which the city for a given sector identifies its overall priorities and gets to the level of specific investments. So just making that point before I go to the next slide and turn over to my colleague Adironke.
Thanks, Pat, and thanks, everybody. Thanks for having us here. I won't spend too much time on the framework. I know that the group has been to you before, but just to set the frame for the action plan for Toronto's culture sector, of course, we're holding in our hands vision guiding principles, ideas that we carry throughout and always kind of check in on. And then we have a certain number of organizing buckets, which we've referred to as focus areas. Underneath those, we have objectives. That really sets where we're going, the key goals, that we want to achieve over our 10-year implementation period. These are key elements for us, key elements that we want to get right and ensure that we are fulsome in the plan on these, because these are the things that really stay over the 10 years. Actions are a next level of detail. Those are currently in development. The actions really can happen in a short, medium, or long-term way, and those have the opportunity to change as our situation, our context, our needs change over the 10-year period. So really wanted to emphasize the importance of that focus of the objectives underneath our focus areas as the key elements that we're working forward with and getting right-sized in this conversation. So wanted to present to you the guiding principles, the draft guiding principles for the plan. I know we had spoken at a higher level. I think originally we maybe had 4. We now have 5 guiding principles. These are, as I say, the things that we'll hold in our hands as we walk through the work of the culture plan. So centering Indigenous culture and creativity, really looking at the ways that we can recognize the creativity and culture and leadership within Indigenous communities of Toronto and support that as we step forward. Looking at equity and accessibility as key prioritized opportunities within our step through in the action plan. Championing artists and creatives and creative industries. So really recognizing that as a central plank of how we work through and look at city building and also community well-being. Looking at how we attract and build audiences. So one of the pieces that we've heard a lot from in our consultation, and I didn't speak deeply on the consultation, but we certainly have had a lot of sessions leading up to this work. Finding that way that we can really increase the access to cultural experiences and also opportunities for creation and really create an environment where audiences know what's happening and can step into it. And then finally, fostering innovation and redesigning systems. So really helping to build and cultivate that environment that supports innovation, but also taking the initiative to remake things that aren't working, to develop, to improve processes. A lot of these are, internal ways that we work within the city to help to support creation as we step forward. One piece that's new with respect to the focus areas, I think probably when we spoke last, we had these 4 focus areas, culture everywhere, culture for all, for the future, and beyond our borders. The key element that we've added to this, because we think it's essential, is to really capture where are we going? So these outcome statements say, at the end of the 10 years, what does the world look like? So under the everywhere, really looks at how we see culture and creativity as essential components of complete communities right across the city in every neighborhood. For all, really making sure that culture can be discovered, can be accessed, can be a key part of experiences, both key destinations and locally. For the future, again, tagging onto that idea of innovation and really Toronto leading and preparing to lead in advance into the future, something that we are already doing, but encouraging and supporting it to move forward further. And then beyond our borders, how are we supporting both Torontonians in stepping out globally, but also in ensuring that Toronto is showcased globally? So what I'm looking at, what I'm providing here on the slides is the draft objectives under each focus area. So under the everywhere focus area, really looking at how we can bring cultural uses into spaces across the city, cultural and creative uses across the city in different spaces. Both the existing and then how we prioritize and support expanding that, so growing the quantum spaces, and how we help to make it accessible broadly. Underneath for all, and sorry, I'm not reading the slide exactly because you have the slide in front of you, so I'm trying to make it a little bit interesting, but I'm happy to stick directly to the slide if that's helpful. But underneath for all, really this is how do we ensure that cultural experiences, creative experiences, and opportunities are accessible. So improving access, looking at equity in terms of our funding and organizational practices. How do we support culture and creativity? And helping to strengthen and build community connections and partnerships so that it's not just coming from one area, but truly discoverable. For the future, these are some critical components. So research and data are critical. Supporting sector sustainability. You know, I know the film industry, for example, has done a lot of great work in terms of greening. How do we make that part of our festivals and events across the city? Supporting capacity building and skill development, and then pathways to employment, also a critical piece. And then finally, beyond our borders, how do we champion, promote local creatives and the creative industry, both within our borders, within the city, but also regionally and internationally, and really growing our culture sector and continuing to invest in the development there and promoting cultural experiences, helping to drive tourism as part of our way forward. I'll pass it back to Pat.
Good, thanks, Aranka. So moving to the next slide, this is central to the question posed at the front of this item by Councillor Fletcher, which is where does film reside and what's the relationship of the work of the Film Board to these planning processes? So one of the things that we've heard very clearly, particularly on the economic development side, is that people want the city to be much more deliberate, vocal, intentional about naming sectors of strength with the greatest potential to create equitable wealth and job creation in this city. So among those are things that you might expect given the diversification of the local economy, but life sciences, food and beverage, certainly the innovation economy and the startup sector, but creative industries as well. What that means, third bullet, is that the city would commit to a variety of measures controlling for where it can influence this type of economic growth, principally through targeted workforce development, land use, a bit of targeted granting, otherwise development incentives like the remade IMIT that will have a significant focus on creative uses. What that means is high-level direction is set out in the economic development plan that the creative industries would be a sector of strength to be focused on, and thereafter, sector-specific strategies such as the film strategy led by the Film Board would be set out to articulate much more clearly and at a final level of detail what the investment pattern would be. Continuing on, as mentioned, both of these plans have similar structures, so I won't belabor this point, but we'll move into a discussion of what some of the actions are. Again, we are at, I would suggest, the 80-plus point of a year-long public consultation exercise that has included an expert advisory panel, public opinion polling research, as well as broad public consultation. So what you will see here is a reflection of all of that input. We have a number of priority areas. Strong main streets certainly features among them. And again, this is a 10-year plan, and we have really particular stresses in this city when you look at the fate of small business and what that's doing to our commercial high streets and the neighborhoods that surround them. So strengthening Toronto's main streets. We want to look at the tax policy framework. We currently offer 15%, for example, property tax break through the Assessment Act for small business, but what else might be done and how do we ensure that all small businesses have access to that measure, as currently the built form out in strip malls in the suburbs presents a challenge. And we do want to continue to double down on what is pretty phenomenal growth in Toronto's food and beverage sector, not just in terms of its significant employment footprint, but it's a sector that provides a real gateway onto the middle class for particularly newcomer communities, and it is increasingly an element of this city's brand abroad. So we'll be working to strengthen that. We're also hearing that there's a desire to have Toronto, again, be more confident, stand up, and lead globally from its position of strength. So we are seeing an increasingly competitive foreign direct investment attraction environment, and that would, I would suggest, include the creative industries. So needing to work very closely with our partners at Toronto Global to ensure that we continue to draw in more than our fair share, and I'd include talent in that. capacity to host and incubate international events, notably with the move of Collision to be rebranded as Web Summit Vancouver for 2025 from Toronto after effectively a 5-year run. Conversation in the city about what comes next. And a lot of particularly digital media producers are stepping up, saying they would like to see certainly an innovation-focused B2B event, but perhaps one that has a greater emphasis on the creative industries. If you think C2 Montreal, Hub Montreal, or some of the other competing properties around the country. Core Business Districts Action Plan. This is a combination of trying to return the workforce to the core, look at how we use commercial real estate that is in a condition of oversupply right now, and otherwise reinvent the city core for a sustainable future. Desirable business environment. We could not go to a public consultation without hearing very reasonably the city needs to be better. The city needs to look at deregulation. City needs to cut red tape. So in meeting our audience where they're at, there's going to be a significant feature on that. Easy to say, more difficult to deliver. So there will be a lot of work over the 10-year span to try to figure out how the city moves a bit more at the speed of business, but certainly technological innovation is going to assist us in that as well. We've been subject in item 2 here to a number of changes to the provincial planning framework and how we use all of our tools to ensure that we're maximizing our land use protections to grow the economy. And we have a number of initiatives around Indigenous economic development. We'll soon be bringing online the world's largest incubator for Indigenous entrepreneurs in less than 6 months. New and growing business. This is, again, where we are being asked to name sectors and deliberately invest in them. So this would be establishing specific strategies, and the film board and the film strategy being one that would flow from this, among others, food and bev, as mentioned, life sciences, et cetera. New and growing businesses, we are also seeing if one looks, for example, at the current challenges facing the review theater, we need to be better about supporting a variety of business models that not only in the case of the review provide a real cultural benefit to this city, but also are a significant employer in the culture sector. So employee ownership models, co-ops, others. Good jobs. We need to look at where we are able to grow jobs that are less exposed to precarity, and certainly there's a number of efforts such as the protection of employment lands that this board has been involved in. Social procurement, city needs to be much more deliberate. We have targets, but thereafter we don't efficiently equip diverse suppliers to navigate our system. So there'll be a real emphasis on that given the significance of the city's procurement portfolio. And we've mentioned portfolio lands with a focus on significant precincts. So Scott gave an excellent presentation on McCleary in the context of Portland's, but Downs View would be another one of those, and both of those have significant creative industry components to them. Quality of living, what we heard on this is that the city is facing certain challenges, affordability, certainly housing, et cetera, the nature of the public realm, and that all of these need to be tended to in order to ensure that we continue to attract really high levels of investment and talent, which drive this city's economic growth. So you'll see this touches on housing, mobility, and public safety, and public realm cleanliness and attractiveness. So those are the areas that we've heard. I can answer any questions, get to a greater level of precision if you wish, if any of those interest you. Conscious of your time, we'll take you through next steps. So we are on to the Economic Community Development Committee on September 18, and should that committee find so, onward to council in October. The film board would be directing, I understand, the re-up of the film strategy at some future point that's been under discussion here. And then finally, I'll just close on the point that these action plans, again, do not constrain the role of the film board in setting strategies and priorities for the City of Toronto's work to support the film sector. Thank you very much. And should you have any other questions, just going to the last slide, Mojan and Adam and Corey, whose information is here, are available to take any additional feedback such as you may wish to provide. But thank you very much for your time, and happy to take any questions.
Thanks. Are there any questions? Can you just put the last slide up, please, Pat?
The second to last with next steps.
Which one are we dealing here with? An action plan for Toronto's economy or an action plan for Toronto's culture sector?
So for comments on the culture sector, Mojan Jeanfer is available, and for the action plan for Toronto's economy, Adam will be available to take comment. But judging by your look, I'm not sure I'm answering your question.
No, because I thought the culture plan and economic update was mostly the culture plan.
Film features in both, given its nature as a major job producer in this city, and we view it at this board and elsewhere as an industry, and are most concerned with its industrial output, less from someone who worked for years at Canadian Heritage, less from the Canadian content angle of things. But other aspects of the broader film sector, mentioning the review, for example, and talking about audience development, does fall into the culture plan.
Okay. Cynthia?
Thank you, Chair, and I just want to follow that up with some more clarification. So when you talk about creative industries, are you including film and television in creative industries? And on the slide about the priority sectors, is that where we fit in the plan?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Cynthia. Through the chair to...
Yes, I missed it because Councillor Carroll was speaking to me. Yeah, you'll get on there, don't worry.
Do you want me to repeat the question?
I'll repeat the answer.
All right. So through the chair to you, Cynthia, the most properly, film sits within creative industries. For most government bodies, film exists in a continuum, as with Ontario Creates or the Canadian Heritage portfolio of agencies. So from a policy and program delivery standpoint, it exists in a range of creative industries. It is the largest in this city of those, but Marguerite is the Director of Film and Entertainment Industries, a bit of an outlier name, but when yeah, I'd like to change that someday. When
so would she.
So someone could probably prepare a motion at this. So for the purposes of the action plan for Toronto's economy, it will state creative industries, and then thereafter, the film board would take on the biggest piece of that, leading to a renewal of the film strategy. And then this board's remit actually includes, as you suggest, television and digital media, and there are sector-specific strategies that could follow. My understanding is that film is sort of the first priority among these for the board and for Marguerite, but thereafter there could be other creative industry strategies.
Sorry, I think we have all the strategies under one place, Pat. But anyway, we're here for film and many. Go ahead, Cynthia, do you have more?
I don't want to cut off Councillor Carroll. I just have a couple of follow-ups.
No, your turn. She's coming next.
So on the next steps, the plans that will go to ECDEV, will those plans have the actions in them?
Yes, much as I just illustrated in the example of the action plan for Toronto's economy. So there was there were 5 actions or so under each area, but yes.
Okay, so I thought those were objectives, but so the actions and objectives, you use those interchangeably?
Yeah.
Do you use actions and objectives interchangeably?
No, working sort of in a cascading manner, there is a vision, as Adam said, with respect to the culture plan, sort of what's the end state that you hope to achieve. Thereafter, there are principles, right, that are sort of, those are the motherhood statements around sort of what is your value set for the work that you intend to approach. And then for the action plan for Toronto's economy, starting with main streets and continuing on through deregulation, there are a series of, Adirondack used the term buckets, but areas that we heard from feedback. And among those is a growing business, and that includes a focus, an action on creating strategies for specific sectors with the greatest potential to equitably generate wealth and grow jobs.
Okay, so those will be like sort of the more specific.
Cynthia, we have to hear your question.
Sorry, I can't look at Pat and talk about Mike at the same time. So sorry, Pat. But, then just to the last thing, you said that the plans won't constrain the film board's ability. Can you maybe provide us some insight on how the plans could support the film board's ability to develop our own sector strategy?
I think a recommendation to council of the action plan will be the film board to renew the film strategy. That effectively, that's the handoff from this action plan to the work of the film board.
Thank you, because I don't think it was like that to start with, so I guess we're getting everybody's attention. Councillor Carroll.
Well, actually, it's not, I don't really have questions anymore because I was going to ask Pat to explain that. I'll wait till
Okay,
speakers.
that's fine.
I think I just want to follow on that.
Sure, there may be others, questioners here today. Others, anybody? Pardon?
Yeah, Councillor.
Sorry, somebody, a hand on the corner. All right, thank you. I was looking at your hand, not the one, not your digital hand. It was, okay, thank you, please.
Is that me?
Go ahead, Magali, yeah.
Okay, thanks. Pat, question for you. In the culture plan, when it pulls out, I think it's the culture plan or the economic one, but when it pulls creative industries as a sector of strength, I wonder, it seems a bit soft to me. I don't think we shine all that much in that. Is there a way to include earlier on in the objectives or priorities a big focus on attracting external investment, fostering the global competitiveness of the major economic drivers in culture? And I think we could name film and TV production, major film festivals, like the marquee events that make Toronto really like stand out globally and bring that much money yearly. It seems like that came a bit far in the plan iteration.
Through the chair to you, Magali, thanks for the question. You're right, these things are an exercise in sorting ultimately, and sometimes it's functional and sometimes it's by sector. And in this case, everything you've asked for does show up functionally. So there is a real focus in the action plan for Toronto's economy on being much more deliberate about bidding and hosting of major events. Not since, well, we will have the World Cup and we will need to learn from that, but prior to that point and following and with the loss of collision, we need to really think a lot more strategically and how that intersects with the creative industries, be that a business focused C2 type model or be that what's the next marquee festival in this city, because we have not grown one in 20 years, 15 years. So all the elements you speak of do show up, though they are in different places organized functionally rather than concentrated by sector.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Magali?
Yeah, somewhat. Thanks, Pat. I think it's just that being like always under creative industries may not serve us all that well, but I know that there's the two plans, so it's just a matter of understanding when it does come up as its own business. Like in a way, to me, it's like we should also be clustered with food and sports and like the true major big hitters, given the economic impact of the business.
Yeah. And through the chair to you, Magali, I'm sorry if that wasn't clear. That is the intent. What this slide says is creative industries will be named as one of a small number of sectors of strength that the city will invest in to include life sciences, food and beverage, and the innovation ecosystem.
Okay.
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm not sure if this was addressed or if it's even within the scope of what you're doing, but I know in terms of talking about growing the sector and like hosting and betting on more world events, is affordability in the city of Toronto also being looked at? Because I think that's one of the major hindrance of like hosting events or people even coming to events in the city of Toronto. So I'm just wondering how that plays into this.
Yeah, through the chair, thank you for the question. Affordability is. It was something that we heard very frequently about. Affordability in this city is driven by many different factors, not all of which are within our control. So in this case, we do address affordability. Adirondack, for example, mentioned access to space. The city may be somewhat cash poor, but is certainly asset rich. And as our colleagues from Creatio and elsewhere, we need to be much more strategic about how we make use of some of these assets so that we can reduce the financial barriers to participation for both audiences and creators.
Any other questions? I just have a question, because in this whole discussion which we've been discussing this for a while now because of the confluence of the two, and the nonprofit sector and the for-profit sector, and I don't find that clearly defined here. There's a large part of the cultural sector that is a nonprofit grant-dependent sector, and then there's an industrial part that is a for-profit, lots and lots of money that creates $2.5 billion a year. So I don't see how you've clearly defined those two things here yet, and I think that's one of the reasons why there's a level of uncomfortableness that remains in, is it a pottery class or is it Basin Media Studio? Because they're very different, and I'm not sure you've made it yet.
Thanks for the question, Councillor Fletcher. So we would agree that the creative industries will feature prominently in the action plan for Toronto's economy as one of, say, it may be 5 or maybe 6 significant sectors, and it will there be treated industrially as food and beverage would, looking at land use and development incentives and everything needed to create a good environment for it to grow. That being said, the culture plan has originated in the city in 2003 and refreshed usually at a rate of about every 5 or so years thereafter. You're right, found its origins in principally the not-for-profit arts sector, and within that even, I'd say the not-for-profit performing arts sector. We think that that is a sector, as you can tell by the relatively high rates of failure right now, as public money recedes from the system and audience behavior changes and corporate money recedes from the system, it is not marked by really high levels of innovation. And we would like to see some of the behaviors that characterize the film sector in terms of being entrepreneurial, globally focused, instinctually collaborative across a variety of sectors, to be more emulated in the not-for-profit sector so that sector can become more sustainable and less, as you say, grant dependent.
I guess I just need to be clear on how are you defining creative industries? What's that definition for us today?
So for us, there are a couple of ways we could do it.
Well, how are you doing it?
We work off NAICS codes, and StatCan uses cultural satellite accounts that provide a coding of cultural goods and services. And that, for example, is what we've used for the property tax subclass system, where we need really precise definitions used by others. So we rely on federal government definitions that are applied by various bodies across the country to define what creative industries are.
So who's in it? Tell us.
Right. Everybody who's in it, we don't currently support, I'd say that. But film, music, interactive digital media, for-profit producers of culture, to include book publishing. It's defined principally by IP-intensive industries that are creative, that operate with for-profit business models, but are sort of cut off when you get into advertising, design, et cetera.
That's quite clear. So the culture plan and the creative industries plan, that's a Venn diagram.
Yeah.
But some of it generally is not for profit, and I think confusing the large for-profit industry with the not-for-profit has been troubling to date.
That Venn diagram is a good way to put it, and we are trying to be as precise as we can around who we're trying to help and how.
So in the presentation, I'm not sure that you've managed to meet that.
So we can take that away, and certainly in the action plan for Toronto's economy, I think where it'll be really important to circumscribe clearly what the creative industries are, will ensure that we work on that.
Because it is coming to economic development, and everybody's welcome to come there. I'm sure we'll have another go at it before that. Any other questions? Those of you who feel like taking a pottery class, go ahead. Those of you who want to run a big studio, please proceed. You are all covered under this at the moment. Go ahead. Like to speak, Councillor Carroll?
Yeah, maybe I can help the presenters along with this. You are not looking at the culture plan. Everyone's clear on that. You asked staff for an update on a thing that is not drafted yet. This is the structure that is beginning to take shape, but this is not the culture plan. You're not looking at it yet. We are wedded to these focus areas now. You asked for an update. What the culture plan is the thing that will come to economic development in September. So the questions you ask and the answers and the feedback, they will probably evolve into what is finally drafted, because, you know, we got there a little bit even more. The consultation, really, to be fair, the last session was last week. Magali was at it. Because we went out and did the regionals. So we had an economic development consultation last week in Etobicoke. So, you know, this feedback is now taking shape. The advisory panel throughout that time has been meeting throughout because remember, we're talking about a plan that was asked for by a mayor that's not even the mayor anymore. That's how long we've been working on this.
Oh, that.
Yeah, this has been going on for a long time. Throughout that, I've been aware, I wasn't here in this committee for the last update, but I've been aware that people are worried that somehow the film strategy that exists in a very robust way is somehow going to be subsumed by either one or the other of these things. We have discussed creative industries in both places because it is everything from how do we educate people to succeed in the film industry, and they're still doing projects that the production takes place on their dining room table, to CineSpace being successful in whatever location it goes into and everything in between. That's the film strategy, and it needs its own commissioner to happen. And we're not going to change that. There's not going to be any recommendation in the culture plan that, now we have a culture plan, we don't need a film commissioner. That's never going to happen. But it has been, you'll be happy to know. Are you relieved now? Yeah. But it has been necessary from my perspective. My co-chair in the culture plan is Maxine Bailey. From our perspective, it has been necessary to discuss screen-based industries in both places, because there's a symbiotic relationship in both places. There just is. That's the special thing about this. I think because of the amount of investment that the city has made with its own land, with its own money, having a staff support system, it's always going to be a sector that we focus on, however many sectors we choose to focus on in our economic development department, because of the history of investment in it, of both effort, land, and dollars. So it has to be discussed there. But we felt strongly that it also had to be discussed as part of discussing the culture plan, because there's that relationship between the pottery instructor, who probably is only able to make a living because occasionally they get a gig and they do a commercial on film. You know, there's that relationship of how do you earn a living as a culture worker in Toronto? Often it's in two places. Somebody who can't really make a living doing live theater, and certainly not in these times with the reduction in audiences, again, you know, maybe the person who does stage lighting has a friend who's a gaffer and he knows just enough to be that guy's best boy and make a little money on a production. You just never know. You just never know where that symbiotic relationship is. So both of the advisory groups, Economic Development Advisory Group and Culture Advisory Group, were vested in the success of the industry you guys work in. And so it couldn't be left out of either discussion. So you'll see both of those happening. But what has been a challenge, I love Councillor Fletcher's comments about how do you square the circle between the big not-for-profit components and the for-profit components. These are struggles. Well, one of the things that was obvious right away when we started both of these advisory groups was the pandemic and post-pandemic economy was affecting both in strange ways. Yes, you might be a for-profit entity, but your audience has flipped from box office to streaming. And what does that mean? How do we support that? Live theater is now looking at, you know, you give, you have federal investment in screen, you have local government investment in theater, but we think you're not seeing road shows that are North America wide show up in town anymore because we don't get special kinds of support. And we actually used to keep your tourism industry afloat. Issues like that started popping up in these sectors. So in both of these advisory groups, there are not-for-profit and for-profit conversations going on. They're all meaningful. And it's part of why you'll see when this plan comes forward, it isn't going to have every action that needs to be taken throughout the course of 10 years. When you look at everywhere, those are loaded words. The outcome statements are loaded words. For the future, what's the outcome statement? Toronto has a thriving, innovative cultural and creative sector. Okay, nice, flowery words. Thriving is a loaded word because right now in the culture sector, hardly anyone is. So if you take the word thriving and you want it to happen in 10 years' time, we have a host of actions we're going to have to draft, and they're going to have to make it into this plan so that our outcome actually happens, that everyone's making a living that should be making a living. They look like flowery statements. In the action plans where people have been working on this for a year, these words have really loaded meaning. And the next step that's going on now, the writing over the summer, the stuff that Mojan and Ben are working on in culture, and Harsh is working on with his team in economic development, is how to take those objectives and the loaded words and now start to write the actions that will make them come true. And some of the actions are short-term, and so they'll be very prescriptive, and they'll be right now, and they'll be make sure this happens. And some will be develop this and make it happen, which means this plan will not only say the things we need to do in the 2025 budget, it will say we have a culture staff, we have an economic development staff. This plan should direct them with a workload for the next 10 years. So some of the actions, it's not that they're vague, it's that they will, one of the actions will be to develop the action, if that makes any sense at all. And that's a struggle, because what's happening in the advisory groups right now, correct me if I'm wrong, Adaronki will agree with me, the grappling that we do in these late stages in the advisory groups is, that means we have to prioritize which ones are right now and better be in the 25-26 budget, and which ones are things we know it will take longer to do, but we better write it in such a way that a council that survives beyond the next election is wedded to getting it done and directing staff and funding them to do that work. So it's like that's the whole struggle of the plan. But what you have here is an update, and you see it starting to take shape here. What you'll see in September should be much more able to give you the comfort that you as a sector are still a focus, but you actually get to swim in both the Atlantic and the Pacific because you're that special. Sorry if that went longer than 5 minutes, Madam Chair, but I felt like there was a need for understanding. Yeah. I hope I represented Maxine and Zabine well in both those advisory groups.
Anybody else? No, I'm just going to say something, that we have an advisory group. It's called the Film, Television, Digital Media Advisory Board. And this whole exercise would have been much better and not be in this, is it pottery or is it Pinewood conversation. And I don't think everybody wants to swim in all the oceans, I want to be clear. Had there been an exercise to come to this board to talk about how film, television, and digital media will be nested in this whole plan. That didn't happen. To me, that's a gross oversight. That should have happened so everybody understood what was going on. And we're racing to catch up. I appreciate you being here today, but I think you've actually raised more questions than you've answered here today, because I'm looking at faces and thinking, wow, what's all this? So that was a problem. You saw here we have McCleary District. We're involved from the beginning when the city is undertaking something that's going to be impacting the industry. We want to be very careful and very clear, whether it's the transportation division, whether it's planning, and I guess it's just a little surprise that economic development, which hosts this board, that wasn't your first stop on how do we do this in a clear way for the industry. And I'm not actually sure that we've come to that yet. So I don't know what's going to happen in September. And I don't know how we can continue to have this conversation that will be clearer that you have 2 advisory boards. Actually, you have 3. You've got 4 because you've got music as well. I don't know if they've had this conversation. But I think I'd like to always go back and try to figure out how did we get to this point where we have 2 oceans and nobody knows what they're doing. I think that's the problem, and I would advise that from this division, even though we're hosted there, when there's going to be activities or new directions, that this board is where you would start for this sector. You have a sector, very robust sector, very for-profit sector, and that is always worried when somebody does something, it may impact the sector. And so that's what you're hearing. Let's make sure that we maintain a robust sector. That's all we try to do here, is keep growing the industry on all fronts. So I think there's more to do on this conversation. I'm sure that others will have more to say about that. But, and I don't know what the next steps will be internally, if you would know what I mean. I saw your next step slide, but I think there's some other steps here to continue with. So I will talk to the vice chair and the chair of our Economic Development Committee, which will be hearing this report, our vice chair, and I chair this board. So I think we should find a way not to have a lot of confusion, because it has upset, it continues to baffle people of what's happening. That's all. Despite all your good work and all your talking to people, that would have been a good idea to get some thinking here. And we have great groups that do that. So that's it. Receive for information.
Madam Chair, I just have a point of privilege.
Yep.
I take every comment that you've raised, except for the one nobody knows what they're doing.
No, I meant here.
I have a real problem with that one.
Sorry, Councillor, I meant here on this board. We're still unclear. Not, you don't know what you're doing.
Okay, perhaps a misuse of prepositions then? Because if it referred to all of us who've been working on this, good.
It didn't. I'm clear. It's this board. This is about the 3rd time we're still having the same conversation here. So this is our problem, but it becomes your problem. And let's continue to keep working this through so that we have a happy day in September. Thank you. And I didn't, if I offended you, I certainly would never have said that about staff. Not in this meeting, I meant here.
Well, my reason for raising the point of personal privilege, and in a committee you can only raise it personally, is that it isn't just staff. We have key people in the community helping with this. And so it's important that when people work for free for over a year, that we're careful how we refer to it.
Well, if I'm not careful, I'm careful that this group over and over and over again has been having a hard time understanding what's going on. And we'll find out, because I'll get a lot of texts and emails when we're done, but I think there's still more work to do, as I've said. So I would like to thank you for being here. We've moved the needle a bit because we've got presentation. We can keep talking about that. And certainly would have a motion to receive for information. Can I get that motion, please? Thank you very much from Cynthia. All right, everybody, in favor? Thank you. Thank you. Enjoy your weekend. Everybody who's presenting gets to hear that before, and the whole board will hear that. So that is item number 2. Item number 3 is our staff update.
Item number 3 is going to start with a recirculation of Jessica's birthday num-nums. I am not taking no for an answer on that. Okay. All right, so a few items to update you on in terms of things that staff have been up to. So the first update is a little sad. Colin Joseph, whom we all love dearly, has moved on to a new role for a year as manager of, you knew that.
I didn't.
Manager of event support. You all know his experience at the city. That is his great strength. It is his passion. It is one of the reasons why we loved him. It's one of the reasons why XOTO House and the Mayor's Mission to LA were so great in the years when he was running them. They continue to be great. So we are very, very grateful to Colin for all of his hard work, his passion for the sector. I know it was a hard decision for him. He really is so grateful for everybody he got to know and work with here. So we wish him only the best, but he gets no cake or num-nums.
That's okay for what?
He gets no cake.
Oh, no
He's
cake.
not getting any cake.
We just want to thank him for staying through the LA mission.
Yes, yes. We are busy preparing for XOTO House at TIFF. As it has been for the last number of years now, it will continue to be a big and a proud event at TIFF when we put forward Toronto's vibe and our strengths as an industry for the global industry that is here for TIFF. That event is made possible through generous sponsors. And so I would like to thank everyone who has come forward to sponsor that event. It's certainly very needed this year. The environment for service production is extraordinarily competitive. We need to put our best foot forward. So we really appreciate the support with that. Not surprisingly, because the industry is going through a period of some constraint, sponsorships are below previous levels, and I want to make people aware of that. So, for those who would like to partake in the opportunity to feature your company at XOTO House and to invite your guests, we sincerely hope that you'll get in touch with Jessica and consider sponsoring and learn more about the benefits that we can offer. We recently participated also in terms of promoting Toronto to the global industry. We recently participated in Ontario Creates FAM Tour. They invited 7 key executives up from LA. We hosted them at a Jays baseball game. We had the good manners to lose, so that went very well. So we've been very busy promoting the industry. And lastly, I would say that we have recently convened a few working groups. Marketing and communications is one. You'll be getting their update. Infrastructure and sustainability, you'll be getting theirs. Post-production and VFX, which we convened too late for, we couldn't get the everybody all together until it was too late to report at this board. They will happily report to the next one. This is in response to some of the points raised, some of the things we learned through the LA mission, and we'll talk about that item when we get there. For an update on workforce development, I will throw to Jessica, the birthday girl.
This is getting embarrassing. So I will just update on 2 workforce development programs that we're currently participating in. One is a partnership with Cinespace for a production accounting micro-credential through Schulich. And we are participating in that by providing 2 bursaries for 2 participants selected by the Black Screen Office. So that's in motion now. And the second is for the 3rd year, we're participating in the Trans Film Mentorship Program, which has now is with IATSE 873 and also has is like, about to announce the show that is being held on, but that allows 5 to 7 trans people to get on-set experience in a variety of different roles. So that's a really great program that we're one of the primary supporters of. So those are our 2 updates for this summer.
Thank you. And we have one last update related to film permitting, for which I will throw to Bobby Donchez.
Afternoon, everyone. I'm Bobby Donchez. I'm the film permitting manager in the film office. I have a short slide to share. I know this is a meaty agenda, and this is the vegetarian portion. So it's just a way to display the info. I'm here to discuss a proposed additional fee, permit fee, which is an exemption fee. It's important to note that exemption fees are not cross-the-board fees or fee increases. It's just a request for a certain exemption, which would be a specific request, and most productions may not even experience this fee. This is just on request. The exemption fee I'm here to discuss is a rush hour exemption fee, where productions that are occupying arterial roads during peak travel times will incur a new rush hour exemption fee added to their permit. It's a one-time fee on the specific permit. The implementation of this fee is to dissuade productions from utilizing arterial roads during key travel times in the City of Toronto and easing traffic on busy roadways. The goal is that productions will coordinate better in the downtown core and have smaller units. So we conducted a large jurisdictional scan, and here on the screen is some of the municipalities that we discussed this with. We dove into not only rush hour fees, but all fee structures and different fees and what they experience. And the summary of it and what we took out of it is the different jurisdictions have, there isn't any similarities to this. Some have rush hours, some don't even have rush hours. Like New York is constantly a rush hour. Some charge, some don't. Some jurisdictions charge a downtown parking fee, while others don't. So it's really important to note that it varies across through our jurisdictional scan, and it's based on the urban geography and traffic patterns of those specific jurisdictions. And here in Toronto, we do have a congestion issue and a traffic issue, so it does fit. Our proposed fee is $500. And what I've done is I've laid out some examples of what a fee on a permit would look like with this addition. So for a Tier 1 example, Tier 1 is, again, productions that are features, series, miniseries, and pilots. The location permit fee is $300, and that's currently in place. And then if that specific production was looking to park during rush hours, a $500 fee would be added for an $800 total. Similar example for Tier 2 productions, which are commercials, documentaries, reality TV, music videos, and short film. Location permit fee currently is at $150, and a rush hour exemption fee would be added for $500, for a total of $650. And just by seeing this, our fee structure is very simple and laid out, and through the other jurisdictional scans that we conducted, we noticed that a lot of other jurisdictions charge per lane, per hour, and our structure is so simplified and easy to budget, and the $500 is the proposed fee due to the current structure that is in place. As promised, that is the slide and the presentation, and very short, and happy to field any questions.
I think that was an appetizer.
Yeah, a little appetizer, yes.
And that's because when it says no parking 4 to 6, everybody wasn't being charged for occupying the street during that time, correct?
Correct, yes.
Yeah. Councillor Carey, do you have questions?
Yeah, you almost got there for me. I see the, it's based on specific urban geography. So there are 1,000,001 busy streets in Toronto, but I'm assuming that you have some grid of what are strategic rush hour streets, and those are the ones we're really talking about here.
Yes, the arterial roads that during the rush hour times, so the posted times they do range between 3:30 and 7 in some areas, but it wouldn't be all. It would be specific streets that are,
Yeah. So do we have control of those in the film office? We agree on a grid of what those are, and we control where you're getting charged. It doesn't somehow get changed in transportation, and we never hear about it, and the next thing we know,
Correct,
they're
yes.
saying, hey, you should have charged a fee, or you should have just forbidden it. Is there a good chain of communication? I ask it because of the changing nature of construction.
Yes, this is all film office, through the film office. So the film office does all the coordination and
Yeah.
does all the parking request and the charging as well. So,
Yeah.
yes.
So if you designate, you meet with the production, you tell them they're going to be charged, and then all of a sudden, oops, sorry, we're doing construction there, you can't even use this street, they get their money back.
Of course.
Okay. Just checking based on past experience. Thanks.
I hope you weren't towed. Any other questions? Yes, please, Sarah.
Hi. Just for my own understanding, because I don't tend to get involved in permits, because obviously or I shouldn't say obviously, but the studio doesn't engage in that. But if you're trying to dissuade it, like, is it a circumstance where you can't or don't want to necessarily prevent it, but you want to curb the number of requests?
Yes, that's correct. So there's a lot of coordination that's taking place where they may request it for until 5 o'clock, say. So with a fee that's put into place, they will not. They will end a little earlier. So it's all about coordination and when we get the word out that this is what we're trying to do, then we can work closer and better with the productions to time and coordinate in the downtown core.
And again, your answer led me to another question, but do they get some sort of penalty if they do run over and run into rush hour?
Well, that they wouldn't be permitted for it currently. So
Okay, so they would end up getting some sort of penalty fee if they were discovered to be continuing to shoot.
yes, I mean in Toronto, if you are in a rush hour area and you shouldn't be,
Yeah.
everyone will know.
Right. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Angela.
I guess this is more of an observation than a question, but from what I see, what you are discouraging is commercials, documentaries, reality TV, and music videos and short films from shooting.
Can you comment on the impact? I think that's a question about, are we considering there's any impact on business?
Yeah, it's not directed at tier 2. I think what you're noticing is the difference in the total permitting fees, which may indicate that, but that's our fee. That's our current fee structure. So it's $150 for a location permit. So $500 may seem like a massive increase to dissuade them, but that is our current fee structure. But it is directed at both tiers. And like I said, for the tier 1, it would be a lot of coordination. And I should say that it isn't as if that because we're putting in charges that we're allowing rush hours. It's still the same. It's case by case. It's still coordinated through the film office, and we work with construction. And if we're able to, then we would grant it. But it is not directed at a tier 2 productions. No.
May I add one thing to Bobby's answer? I think we've all heard that Toronto's traffic is getting a lot of bad press. And certainly when we were in LA, we heard that Toronto's traffic is a real issue for production. We are trying to be a film-friendly city. And so one of the ways that we can do that is by showing we're trying to take real steps to handle congestion so that film crews can get to and from their jobs and so on, more readily. So this is actually intended to ease traffic in Toronto. It is actually you could position it as an XOTO give back, because the film industry is putting itself in a position whereby it is noticing a civic problem and trying to get out of the way of that problem. So I think this benefits both the film industry and the city.
Thanks. Bobby, can I just ask you to be really clear in what the current rush hour provisions are and what compared to the proposed?
Currently, there is no charge.
So there's no charge for taking the lane?
Sorry, what was that?
You have to pay for the times there's green P parking, but
Yeah,
you
so-
don't have to pay for the times when you're outside of green P because you're not allowed to park. So basically, it's free, and this is an attempt to recover some funds. Even nobody else can park there, but if you have a permit, you can park there.
Correct. So currently, there is no fee to park during rush hours, and if not all arterial roads have meters currently. So the ones that do, there is no charge for a production to park during rush hour because there are no meter fees. So it is actually a savings for productions to continue to park through the rush hour and not find alternative means or roads or parking lots. So a $500 charge to either tier is actually helpful to the production if possible to be coordinated.
Angela, again?
I guess really maybe I wasn't clear, and what I was saying is that I don't really see this as a deterrent for Tier 1, and I see it as a deterrent for Tier 2.
So you're suggesting that price is too high for Tier 2, is that it?
Or too low for
or too low for Tier 1, because, I mean, Sony isn't going to care about a $500 charge, but the independent short film that's working on a $35,000 budget is.
So I understand that, and I somewhat agree with that, but through the jurisdictional scan and because of our fees are already the lowest compared to other jurisdictions, it's only $300 to obtain a permit, so you could say the same thing, that our fees are quite low. And to have a fee then of $2,000, which would be an actual deterrent, is out of line with our current fee structure because it's so low to begin with. And all the other jurisdictions do not charge that high either. So the ones that do charge are about $200. So it does, I understand how that would look, where $500 may not seem a lot, but it is a lot in our current fee structure.
I guess you're really coming here for advice, so this isn't set yet, this is a proposal, so we have to take into account what the industry's saying as far as Tier 1, Tier 2, and Sarah's raised a question, Angela's raised a question. Does anybody else have a question about the fees? Yes, Cynthia?
Is there an idea of when this would be implemented to give people time to plan?
We would not be able to implement this right away at all. So the first thing, just like we did when in 2022 when we put out our permitting fees, we gave productions about a year to plan for it. This would require a system upgrade too for us, which we don't currently have. So this is not going to be something that we put into place right away. It is definitely going to be something that's messaged out and being able to budget for.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
The exemption fee, is that a one-time fee or is it like per every day that they want to use those streets?
Just one on the permit.
Sorry, didn't hear the answer.
Just one per permit.
One per permit?
Yep.
So you can be many days on the one permit?
Yeah, and it's I know how that sounds as well, but we don't give rush hours for multiple days on the same permit. It would be for filming only, not parking.
Anybody else? Just want to make sure that the advice that we're hearing from the industry is if that Tier 2 needs to be reviewed or not. Marguerite. As far as
Thank you.
being an
Yeah,
issue.
I think we can certainly take that back and also look at the jurisdictional scans. and also look at things like how movable certain productions are. Do they need to be on an arterial road? Because this will actually encourage productions that can move a block away or something like that to make that move if they really need to. So there are a number of considerations, but we hear the point that you're making through the chair, Angela. I hear the point you're making. It's a point that we discussed amongst ourselves as well. So we will continue to review that and then take this forward through the budget process is what we need to do.
I guess I'm just going to ask the board, is that a consensus that have another look at this for the kind of, did you have your hand up, Jason? No. It was just your finger in the air, okay. Not, and just your pointer finger, I want to be clear on that. Is that okay that we'll just ask to have that look based on that, make sure that in that side of the industry that the folks that are on a much cheaper budget are able to do that? And we're not going to get a lot of pushback on that. Anybody else you should talk to besides, who else should you get that information from?
Bobby and his team have already done a jurisdictional scan. I've spoken to film commissions across Canada.
I meant locally. I'm talking about locally because Angela's now saying she's a little concerned. So that's why I'm asking who else you're going to talk to locally. Because we didn't have any fees before. So I don't want it to look like there's an avalanche of fees.
Right, so we have consulted the industry as well. We've spoken to location departments, producers, and all the feedback has been extremely positive, and they agree that a charge should be placed on this, and they do agree with the charge as well.
So you talked to all the tier twos then, and got an agreement?
Yes. Yes.
Maybe you can have a sidebar, Angela, with Bobby on that one, if you want.
Well, yes.
Okay, so we received that for information. Thank you. Staff report with a go forward before the finalization of that. I note that Councillor Ainsley's joined us. Welcome.
Afternoon. Sorry I'm late. Too many meetings today, Chair Fletcher.
That's okay. You're here. Next is our, and thank you, Mr. Pennington, for staying the crew, because this is now the McCleary planning update. And if you can, infrastructure update from Magali, and then that addresses the presentation on McCleary District.
Thank you. So we did, as the infrastructure subcommittee, the sort of deep dive that you saw the result of today through the first presentation at the board. I certainly want to thank City Planning for the clarity of the presentation and the back and forth we've had with them on this for multiple meetings at this point, and then today's presentation. Out of this, out of today and out of the recommendations we put forward, which you saw bullet pointed today, we want to make sure that it actually goes through the, I guess, administrative council pathway to be recognized as our official recommendation. So as a subcommittee, we would like to put a motion forward on this to have the points, which I don't think I need to reiterate. We heard them today about building heights, about support for film workers in the area, the agent of change principle, the film-friendly features, of the urban design guidelines that we've all worked on for many years, and possibly leveraging public art as a means to celebrate the industry. So I think, I did send the draft motion to the clerk so we can put it up. There it is. So we would like to, I don't know if we need to read it or if people can just follow along, but it's basically to make sure that it goes through the proper channels and be recognized. And the side note to this is, of course, we can talk about any of these right now if anybody that is not on the subcommittee has questions or comments or points they would like to add to this motion. But the side point to this, since we have city planning staff with us today, is that we will we would request that we understand where every single one of these points go as the months go by and possibly the years in some cases go by. We've been pretty succinct in what we're putting forward, and we would like the concrete discussions to keep going along for these if they are going to be implemented, if you need further consultations or assistance from any of us on this, or if they would be abandoned at any point. So that's really why we want to put these through.
Is everybody having a chance to read those, including you, Scott? Maybe you haven't seen them yet.
So I would say from our perspective, this is entirely consistent with what we've heard, and I see no concern. The only, and I don't think it's necessary to amend, but you say the implementation of the McCleary District Precinct Plan. I just note that some of these will have to be given effect through the business and implementation plan. So I leave it to the discretion of the board whether or not they would want to make that amendment, but just understand that that would be as important a vehicle to deliver on some of these expectations.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I'm having trouble hearing it.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm just saying.
I don't know if we could just ask AV to please turn up the volume of the microphone, because I don't think our guests should have to lean so far into it just to be heard. Is there a way to raise the volume?
On all of the deputant microphones, they're never loud enough, but these ones are. So if you wouldn't mind boosting those, please. It is the film board, or somebody will come over and help you. Okay. Go ahead. Thank you.
Anyway, I apologize. I was just.
There,
okay,
great.
There we go.
Thank you.
Okay, in terms of the content of the motion, absolutely no concern. Just in terms of the vehicle, whether it's the implementation plan or the precinct plan, which is a planning framework, some of the motions might be more appropriate for consideration as a part of the business and implementation plan for McCleary District. So again, I don't know that it's absolutely necessary, but just to understand that the intent would be to consider that these both through the precinct plan, if not through the precinct plan, certainly through the business and implementation plan. One's a regulatory document, one is an actual business, the policy document for use of public lands, as an example.
Can we just make that change then to consider the following for both the McCleary District Precinct Plan and the Business and Implementation Plan, which is done in coordination with Waterfront Toronto. Both of these are done, but that's a requirement in order to have a precinct plan after the precinct plan with Waterfront.
That's right.
So if you don't mind adding my scratchy writing in, that would be great. And can you just give us the timelines then, please, Scott, because you gave us the timelines for the precinct plan, but has the business and implementation plan been initiated or started yet?
No, well, I would say that a lot of the thinking that goes into the precinct plan will feed directly into the business implementation plan. So absolutely, the thinking has begun. I would anticipate that that's something we bring forward towards the back end of 2025 to be realistic, given the front end will likely be on Villiers Island, and we'll be looking at McCleary following thereafter.
Okay, and those applications that have just been introduced now with on Bouchette and Salter, do those in any way comply with the plans here of putting the density on Lakeshore and having less density on Commissioners, I meant, or are they offside with this already, the private owners?
So the applications all relate to Lakeshore, so they should be less of a concern from a height peak standpoint, although that's something we're still testing, Councillor, and we'll give you a more detailed update on that or when we have actual community planning staff available. So from that perspective, we would consider it reasonably compliant, but then there's discussions around setbacks and the overall density shown on those applications that have to be reviewed.
Business and implementation plan. Yeah, thank you. And just on the workforce development under the guiding principles, did we go over that? That'll get added in. And I think for the working group that we should go, that should go to the Housing Secretariat. The sector housing notion for film is quite important. Could you just remind us of the zoning? Is this, it's not PIC core, it's PIC something or other?
It's pick mixed use.
Mixed
That's
use,
right.
okay.
Yeah.
And that's
Well, that's the official plan land use designation. So the zoning will come through the precinct plan.
Yes.
Right.
Which we worked hard to get.
Yes, absolutely.
Great. Are there other questions on this, or we can put everything together? Go ahead. Yeah. Question for you, Meg.
Yeah, a question for Magali, I ask it because further to the chair's comments earlier, because I don't even know which of us or if there are additional members that are on the infrastructure committee. I'm wondering if you can just outline, is it clear to the infrastructure committee this is a project on its way in the film strategy with big legs of its own? Is it clear to the committee that the fact that over at the city we're making a shiny little ebook called the Culture Plan, it does not in any way obstruct any of this work? Are they clear they just keep marching on? The Culture Plan has no impact on that?
Yes, I think that's clear to us. Yes.
Okay, good to know.
The only thing I will add to this, and I don't need to triple down on it too much, but the importance of this site at large is huge, because we realize in the past, year, as we start talking about McCleary more deeply, is we've talked about urban design guidelines for years, but it's usually after the fact of a piece of the city existing. So we're always kind of trying to upgrade what we have to make it film friendly. This is one of the only sites in the whole city that has the opportunity to implement all of this and truly make it the film friendly neighborhoods that we've all dreamed of through these guidelines we've all come up with. So just to double down on the importance of a site like this, that is a clean slate for all of it.
Thank you. Thank you very much to the working group for coming up with those motions and looking into this plan, part of our long Portland's work together, and very much to Scott and to Eric for being here this afternoon. Thank you for staying. You got to hear all kinds of things today, so just getting you ready for your weekend. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
4 o'clock, you can go home. Thanks.
And if you want some cake.
Oh, yeah, it's right here. Here, here, Marguerite, they probably want some.
I think they're actively running away.
Oh, you can't leave until you have cake, apparently. So let's just vote on the motion, please, that came from the working group to here through you, Magali. Everybody's seen it, and we have amended it to put the business plan in. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And all the cake is gone now. That's the good news. And then receive the working group report for information. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much.
One more thing in our report.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yep. Sorry.
I'll put my green jaunty hat on for this. We will set up the first subcommittee group meeting fully on sustainability. It's not something we've been able to, in our hours together yet, tackle this summer in the coming, I guess, in July or August, to brainstorm the priorities we would like the board and the film office in the city to probably concentrate on. Currently, we have our eye on grid power and material reuse. We want to expand the work that the city has done so far and complement the work of the Ontario Green Screen. So this is currently under our umbrella of infrastructure and sustainability, but I would invite anyone at the board to connect with me or with anyone on our group if they want to join that. It's a big conversation. It's one on its own, and we'll do it in the next month or two.
Thank you for that. Very exciting. It is infrastructure, so it's good to have it under that umbrella. So thank you. Just received that report for information. Did we do that? Yes? Did we receive the report for information? And now we have to receive the McCleary District Planning update from Creatio and City Planning for information. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you very much. I don't know where Jason went. Oh, he's gone with the cake. So the next, we'll have a marketing and communications working update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. The Marketing and Communications Working Group met on June 13th. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Do I have audio issues too? Okay, good. The group discussed various strategies and opportunities to adjust communication and marketing efforts to current marketing realities. Given the changes in the last 2 years, the message needs to be clearly communicated through all available tools that Toronto is no longer at capacity, rather it has space and open to new business. By building on the current use of social media, traditional advertising, partnerships, and strategic event planning, we can better showcase Toronto's vibrant film industry and its diverse collaborative nature to existing and potential clients. The group also spoke about highlighting the importance of highlighting and celebrating successes. For instance, when projects that have filmed here are showcased at international festivals, we should seize the moment to promote Toronto and even look at having a presence at those events for potentially new clients. The working group looked at various communication tools and social media platforms currently being used. There are definitely areas to further develop a content strategy for Instagram to increase presence and engagement. Additionally, LinkedIn should be utilized specifically for XOTO communications. We spoke about enhancing the use of traditional advertising, similar to how trade media outlets such as the Hollywood Reporter and Variety were used last year to promote the city's Movie Maker magazine distinction. We also discussed a newsletter and how the content and distribution list can be extended to reach a broader audience. The website is also in need of revisions. I would like to add that. Another key recommendation is to work in partnership with organizations and groups that are already promoting their own works here in Toronto to leverage existing publicly available materials to promote Toronto film projects. We also recommend identifying key industry events domestically and internationally that would make sense for the city to have a presence at, and for Marguerite or other film office members to participate on panels and conversations to further promote Toronto and what we offer. Last but not least, the group discussed how XOTO at TIFF can go further in communicating the film office's values and enhance the impact of the event. The group looked at how the invite list can be extended to include more potential new clients. The group will try to meet again once more before TIFF to discuss any new items and sort of just regroup on some of the stuff that were previously discussed. Thank you, and let me know if there are any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there questions? The good work of this committee. Cynthia?
More of a clarification than a question. Thank you for your report. When you say shows that shoot here or Toronto shows, that includes like both our domestic producers who own the IP as well as the inward investment.
Yes, anyone that basically celebrate our successes. For example, whether if they're domestic or foreign or local, anyone. I think we need to tap. I think the committee also agreed that we need to tap in more to our independent and domestic distributors and producers.
Does that answer you?
I love that answer.
You love that answer? Whoa. Great. Any other questions? Or we'll leave it at love that answer? Okay. Could I get a motion to, you're going to move to receive the report with thanks, Cynthia? All right. Thank you. Everybody in favor? Opposed? That's great. Our last issue, and that is the report from the Los Angeles Mission. That would be you.
Thank you.
Piggott. Yes?
Madam Piggott.
Yes.
Thank you. So I will take you through the report very quickly. It was available as a pre-read. But the mayor's mission to LA is something that we've been doing in its current form with teams, with the mayor's leadership, with a large group of people since 2019. But before that, since 2006 is the earliest record we could find, possibly earlier. The setup for it is, or the format for it is, the mayor leads the delegation with key councilors. We were very happy to have the chair of the film board, Councillor Fletcher, with us, and the economic development champion, Councillor Carroll, with us for this mission. We brought 40 industry leaders to Los Angeles from 32 different companies. These companies or organizations included unions, studios, post-production houses, VFX houses, equipment suppliers, finance, workforce development and community groups, associations, and sustainability experts. They were broken into teams so that no matter what question a current or potential client had about shooting in Toronto, there would be someone there who's deeply informed who could provide an answer. This mission, in the course of a day and a half, 2 days, took over 30 meetings with major studios, with streamers, with mini majors, and we also added this year a breakfast with indies that also went very, very well. And we had a networking reception for about 250 industry guests in Los Angeles. So it's an extraordinary piece of outreach. The materials the film office created for that included a Toronto film industry ebook, a trailer, a delegates ebook, and other promotional materials to get our message across. And our message was, number one, thank you for your business. Many of the companies that we met with are companies we've worked with before, simply because we work with so many. So thank you for your business to those who we'd worked with before. And for those with whom we had not yet worked, we recapped all of Toronto's strengths, including the studios, the workforce, the tax credits, the expertise and diversity of the crew and the workforce that work here, the livability of our city, and so on. We also asked them, what's working for you about Toronto and what can we do better? From that, a small selection of the things that we heard from our clients include, number one, their huge enthusiasm for shooting in Toronto for many, many reasons. That's why Toronto is the 5th largest production jurisdiction in North America and the #1 city in which to live and work as a movie maker, according to an American magazine, named Movie Maker magazine. So in addition to their enthusiasm about Toronto, they also requested databases for post and VFX supervisors. They want us to continue our work on workforce development, which, understanding current market conditions, we will do very carefully in collaboration with the unions and at a pace that is comfortable for our existing crew, but obviously looking to fill gaps in our pipeline, of which there are a few. And they looked for enhanced communications and marketing. So in response to that, we pulled together the Communications and Marketing Working Group, lickety-split, so thank you to Alma for chairing that. We also pulled together the Post-Production and VFX Working Group, thanks to Krista for chairing that, and that will report out at the next Film Board meeting. So from the financial perspective, our financials are not yet absolutely locked. Some invoices were late coming in, but the information we have so far, which may be changed before the report goes to committee, is the overall cost of the mission was almost $140,000. Of that, our generous, amazing industry sponsors gave us $128,000. And so we thank them from the bottom of our hearts. It's a huge vote of confidence in this mission, in the work we do together. And I know that our community is what makes us strong in the eyes of our clients in Los Angeles. We somewhat goofily call it co-competition, but it works. Co-competition. When competitors cooperate together to get all of us more business, it's co-competition. And yes, I'm embarrassed, but proud.
All right.
The City of Toronto is paying $17,874 towards this mission to cover all costs related to staff travel. Because our sponsors were so generous, this leaves us with a small overage of $6,283, which will be put towards XOTO House, as that has exactly the same motive, which is to pull more production to Toronto. I do want to say thank you once again to our generous sponsors, to everybody who came, who was, championed Toronto so effectively to our clients, and thank you to staff for once again crushing it.
Mm-hmm. Any questions or comments? Councillor Carroll.
I don't know if this feedback question, I don't know what this is. The only thing that I was a little disappointed in, something I think that would be a benefit at some point, at some mission, maybe not all of them, but I guess it's because I had the experience of the year before when we were just there on special effects, VFX. We didn't have a mayor with us, so we were mixed together. There were, you know, I was sitting in the same room with some of the filmmaker companies. But on this mission, we had a limo, us with the mayor going in one direction, and then each of the industry groups. And while the mayor does know a lot of people in the film business, I would love it if we shuffled it a bit in the next mission so that the mayor was sometimes on one of the meetings hearing how our local industries interact when they go to a studio. I think it'd be good for her to see how they pitch and to be part of that. I know there's people get kind of uptight about protocol, but I don't know that she's as uptight. And so I think just to see how you interact, I think that would be for part of the mission. Maybe not every trip, but just so that she sees how that works. Because there were so many meetings going on. And then we also, because we loaded in the Toronto Global piece, she didn't get to go to the indie breakfast. So there was no time where the pitch was being made that she wasn't learning from how the actual sector industry folks do it. So if we could like sprinkle a couple of those into the next mission, I think she'd love it. Yeah.
Through the chair to you, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Completely agree. We did do, with all of the delegates, we did a debrief within about a week or so of being back and got ideas from everybody about, you know, what worked, what we can change up, and so on. That was one of the points that was raised. And I think next time we will be looking at mixing up the mayor and the councillors. We'll definitely take a look at that.
Yeah, okay. So I'm on the same way.
Thank you. Sarah?
Mine is just a comment, but this was my first LA mission, so I don't have anything to compare it to, but I thought it was extraordinarily well run. From everybody that I heard from, they felt that the groupings that were put together were really solid and allowed for some very meaningful conversations where everybody had something to contribute from the Toronto team. So just a big thank you to staff and the city. I thought it was great.
I think so. Anybody else? Yes, it was exceptionally well run. We'll also thank our dearly departed staff person who was doing all of that. And apparently the reception on the Thursday night was in the hottest club in LA. So whoever got that was brilliant. Everybody was talking about, wow, you did that. So everybody noticed, and I thought that this was the mayor's first mission. I've been on quite a few with our previous mayor, and she was very well received, and she got it pretty quickly, and people were quite impressed. So I just want to echo that, and maybe just with a vote of thanks to the great work and the staff and putting it all together, and all the sponsors. That was very significant to be able to do that from the city. So thanks to everybody. And we'll put that in the minutes. Sarah, you're moving a big thank you to the staff for an excellent mission. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And receive for information the report from our commissioner. In favor? Opposed? Thank you very much. I think that's just about it for the business, and everybody is 10 after 4. You now want to go. Anything else that anybody has to say before we adjourn? No? Very good. So we do have to just excuse a few people. So I just moved this today. The Film, Television, Digital Media Board excused the absence of Gail Haupert, Paula Devonshire, Amir Andala, Ramona Pringle, and Kenneth Rogers from the July 5th meeting of the board. Would you like to move that, Shelley? Moved. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And before we leave, I just want to say a big, tremendous thank you to our great staff in the film office, commissioner, everybody that just support this industry and support the work so much. Thank you so much. We won't meet till the fall, so have a great summer, everybody. And also to our clerks who follow along and really help us get through these meetings so we're official, right? So thanks very much. Have a great summer, everybody. Thanks for being here this afternoon. Meeting adjourned.